Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and we are here today for another one of our conversations at home. I want to continue reminding everyone that we are continuing to raise funds for our COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund, which is supporting SAG-AFTRA members who are currently out of work due to all of the closed film and television productions. So please check out the video link below this interview and check out and support if you're able to in any way. Today we're joined by the wonderful Sam Trammell, who's currently starring in Homeland in the final season. I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit. You've had some great online connectivity at the moment while we're all staying at home, and it seems like you're kind of having a little bit of a fun time with the hatred that everyone's piling on your character this season.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I so love it because, you know, when you take on a character, you just hope initially, like the base level, that it's believable. You know, when I talked to Alex Gansa about playing this part and, you know, read it for him, and I was just hoping people could believe me as a president, but like the fact that I'm getting hatred too is it's like perfect, because this guy is definitely supposed to be an obstacle, you know, to Saul and Carrie. And yeah, it's funny to see what people say. They've got some choice words for him. And it's fun. It's always fun to play a villain, because I do play villains, but like more than 50% I'm not playing villains. And so you imagine if it was the other way around, I'd want it the other, sort of grass is greener. But so it's fun to play kind of a bad guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I heard that, when you were going up for the show and when Alex Gansa wanted to consider you for this part, that you actually sent in a self-tape audition. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that and kind of how much you knew about the character to build out that audition tape that you sent in.
Well, I mean, you could tell, you know, I knew a bit because there was a paragraph about him. So I knew that he was sort of ambitious and maybe a little arrogant. And so I knew a few things about him, but I didn't know, obviously, the whole, you know, everything that was going to happen, the whole story arc. But when I talked to Alex about it, he gave me everything he knew. And so I sent in a self-tape, and then I went into Fox and just read it again for them, so he could, because they were going to send it to Fox, and Fox had to approve me, but he wanted to he had a couple notes for me. And because I'd read us one scene completely wrong. I would have played it so differently, but I didn't have all the information. So we redid that scene, and I did it for two of the other writers. And it's always weird. I mean, because this is a SAG conversation. Like, it's always strange for me when you're sitting there, because I had worked with Alex Gansa before on Maximum Bob way back in the day. Like, it was on ABC for 9 episodes. So anyway, I knew him, and we're just, you know, you're just shooting the shit, and he's like 10 feet away from you. And then it's like, okay, you're the president now, go. And it's just so weird, like doing that switch. I find it a lot harder if you have to really do a lot of BSing before you read, you know. It's a lot easier just to come in the room, read, and then, you know, and then do the small talk.
Absolutely. And then, you know, given that you had that history with Alex as well, how was that collaborative relationship once you were on set and, you know, he was really arcing out with you the details of your character throughout the season?
Well, it was interesting. You know, Alex was mostly here. Like, he only went to Casablanca a few times because he was doing all the, you know, he could do all the writing from here, and it was better for him to be here for whatever reasons. So, you know, I honestly didn't have tons of contact with Alex once I got the part. It was a lot with Leslie Lincoln Glatter, who's the producing director, and she directs a lot of the shows. And then, you know, some of the other writers were there a lot. And so I'd see them more than I'd see Alex. It's funny, I saw everybody else more than I saw Alex. So it was sort of that. And we had such a long conversation about this character, you know, that he was going to be like a little Trumpian, you know. But we didn't want to be, that's what he wanted, but he didn't want to be on the nose. And so I kind of fit that, you know. I had enough sort of natural naivete, maybe, to work for this part. You know, it's funny, the natural qualities that you have that will work with something that you can't act, but just will help you get the part or not get the part sometimes.
Yeah, and because you were mentioning Leslie Lincoln Glatter, and, you know, I know that you previously worked with her and some of the other crew, like the DP from True Blood and other projects, you know, similarly with Alex. And so I was curious, because I think there's a really unique challenge in stepping into a show, particularly that's as prestigious as this, like right in the final season, season 8. But how did having crew on site who were there day by day, that you already had that existing relationship, kind of help welcome you into the space and help you kind of find the natural rhythm and flow of what that set was and how everybody was working together cohesively?
It was huge. Because I had Leslie, who worked on True Blood. She directed a few seasons. Sunday Stevens, who was the first AD, who had worked with us for even longer than Leslie on True Blood. Dave Klein, who was the DP, worked on True Blood, and so did Anyway, in costumes we had that. So there were a bunch of people. Deborah Beebe. So, and that's a huge thing. It makes you feel so much more comfortable, because when you're going on a set like that, even though I've had a lot of, I've had a long career at this point and worked on a lot of successful things, it doesn't matter. You're always having to re-prove yourself in a way. And so you go on a show like that and you're playing the president, and I'd never played a politician before. It was intimidating, and so having friendly faces was massive, And you're in another continent too. We're in Morocco, which was really crazy.
Yeah, and I know that one of the pieces of research that you did was a book that Linus Roche had read for his role as chief of staff, that really talked about the environment and the work in the White House across different administrations. And so I was curious what some of the details were from that book and some of the other pieces around that were really useful to you. Well,
there was really nothing specific that I drew from it, but it really gave me an idea of the world that happens and how each new presidency is a whole new culture within that building, the White House. And because that's a lot of what it's about, as far as playing the president or playing chief of staff is just what the vibe is in the room. And yeah, you're making big decisions, but what's your relationship with the secretary? Did you put up these pieces of art? What did you put up in the Oval Office? Like, how did you change it? That kind of stuff is just the stuff that grounds you, in the room. Because it's just a trip that they really built the Oval Office, and they built a lot of these hallways, and it was all in Morocco, and we'd fly there from here, and, you'd fly all the way there to be the most American person you could be.
There's a great irony in that. I also, there's such a uniqueness in your character's journey in the fact that, you started the season as vice president and then he very quickly becomes president. Did you look to those few times in history where that's happened? Because, essentially whenever it happens in history and even in the show, you're responding to a traumatic event that has happened to the country and all of a sudden really stepping up to the plate to lead the country and make them feel that everything is okay.
Oh yeah, a lot like LBJ. That wasn't because of that was Nixon, but yeah, for sure. And this was sort of the ultimate of that. It was like 2 presidents killed right at the beginning of a peace treaty. So Alex just really wanted to set up the most messed up situation that you could step into, and have it be somebody that's just not ready for it. And I think you guys know that you might know that they meet with all these, ex-administration officials and CIA people to figure out what is going to be relevant and happening in a year, like a year from now. And they nailed it, because right when this happened, and we forget because coronavirus happened and that's been all the news, but we were about to have a peace thing with the Taliban. And we've been talking to the Taliban, and then it got sort of derouted from a drone bomb. So that's exactly what happened in our show, was that peace with the Taliban was going to happen, and then this helicopter, gets shot down or whatever happened to it. I guess I don't want to spoil.
You don't
but yeah, they're pretty amazing. I sort of lost my train of thought, but just they're pretty amazing at getting that stuff down. It's so smart, those people.
Yeah. Well, given those advisors that they have from the CIA and national advisors and the amount of kind of geopolitics as well in the show, how much of a deep dive did you want to do on that side of things to really kind of understand the nuts and bolts of your character's decision making? And did you have access to those advisors as well to ask them specific questions?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. And, I really wanted to kind of go into it as, kind of naive about all that, because this guy really has a hard time making decisions and doesn't know what he's doing really. And it's sort of be careful what you wish for. So I did, most of the work I did was sort of him as a congressman or senator, young. We were sort of imagining a Paul Ryan, maybe from Ohio, and maybe what his family life was like. And you kind of want to just, the thing of just being just feeling like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time when you're actually at the right place at a difficult time, so there was sort of more of that work for me. I wish I would have had access to those people, because that just sounds so fascinating. And I know Claire Danes is involved with it, and I think Mandy Patinkin might be as well. And they all sit with those people before they start the season.
Yeah, given the way that, he pivots so much and he kind of changes which path he's following and who he's listening to so constantly, how did you think about that in terms of your performance? Because you have to, as your character pivots, you have to make sure that you're also bringing the audience with that decision, and that we kind of understand why he's changing so rapidly all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where you're hoping that the audience is following your thought process or seeing your thoughts. And I do a lot of, look, when you get on the set and they say action, you want to be free and let things happen and have a certain amount of openness and not, things that aren't planned. But at the same time, I like to really go through what characters are thinking in that moment, and what like the train of thought. It's very semiotic in a way. It's like what thought signifies another thought, and how that thought signifies another. And so, because there's a lot of, for this part, there's just a lot of, it's exactly what you said. It's like a lot of close-ups of me, or following how I'm, absorbing information, assimilating it, and then coming up with something else and seeing where I'm going. And sometimes being ahead of me and sometimes being behind me. But you hope that kind of, that shows in your eyes and shows in your physical, sort of body language. And yeah. I really love that. I mean, honestly, as an actor, I love the close-ups, and I love exactly that, like the between the lines moments, that's like my favorite place to live, is in acting.
Yeah. And given those constant pivots, I know that you've talked a little bit about how he was it was a more challenging character for you to get into the mindset of. So were there any ways in which you thought about your preparation or your understanding of him differently from the way that you usually prepare for a character?
No, not so much. No, I mean, other than just, there were specific things. I mean, I remember the first day on set, I all I had to do was sit at a table and then have some lines. But I remember just asking, like Leslie, I was just like, is it okay for me to sit like this? Because you're the president. Can I cross my legs? Can I, because you just don't know what to do. And a fascinating thing about Homeland that actors would be really interested to hear is that they have a rule on that show: no hands in pockets and no coffee, because it just dissipates tension. So you're not allowed to ever have your hands in your pockets or be holding a cup of coffee. And like the first few days, I had a hard time, like not every once in a while putting my hands in my pockets. I have to pull them out. Mm-hmm. So that really did actually inform a lot of how I was physically with this character, which very much informs my mental, mental part of it, and how I deliver lines. I think, because I think it really, I'm kind of a physical. I started in the theater, and that physicality kind of I work with that, and so I think there was a real unnatural influence that had on me. The kind of no leaning, very still, a lot of stillness, and exploring how you can be powerful and be very still, and trust that, and trust in the writing, which thank God I had good writing to actually trust. Like I knew I'd probably be fine, if I just said the line sometimes,
Because you were talking about, little moments where you'd say, "Would the president cross his legs?" And obviously there's so many specific protocols. How much of a dive did you feel you needed to go into on that, just even down to the way that other people address him and he talks to other people, who walks into a room, side by side with him?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because there's these buttons that people wear, that you wear. You'll see there's like the American flag and that they'll have, that these politicians will have on their lapels, and these buttons signify how close you can be to the president. Like there's certain buttons that will give you can be right, you can, like the chief of staff, he's got, I think it's the flag, but there are other buttons that are like, well, you can only be like 6 deep, But I didn't do too much of a dive with that because I had other things to think about, just learning the lines and just thinking about the scenes and how I wanted to come across. But it's pretty simple. It's a trip when people are opening doors for you and you walk into a room and everybody stands. It's definitely a fun power trip. It's definitely, you get some sort of added respect unconsciously from people because you're playing the president. It's funny, the people in the background in Morocco, I think a lot of them hadn't seen the show and they really didn't know what it was about, but they recognized me from True Blood. Mm-hmm. Some of them, and some of them just knew I was playing the president. So they were very, deferential, and, just because I had a suit on and I'm playing the president.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about shooting in Morocco as well, and just how that kind of naturally lends itself when you're shooting on location and you're shooting with a mix of crew who've come over from the States, but also local crews, how that just kind of builds a natural camaraderie because you're all, in this one environment together. Absolutely.
Because that place Morocco is, it's an Islamic country, and and it's beautiful, but it's so different. Everybody looks different. Everybody acts differently, and some people speak English, but it's mostly, Arabic and then French. And I was lucky because I lived in Paris for a year, so I speak French. So that was a big help. But Linus Roach and I, we totally bonded because there were just a few restaurants we would go to and we'd always go together. And, I really felt like I was almost in the show being in Morocco because it was it's definitely a third world country and just kind of chaotic. And I felt like I was going to be slipped a dossier and then like thrown in a van and kidnapped. It just had that look about it. Just had that kind of homeland sort of exotic look about it. But it was interesting because most of the time when you work, you go to a place and there's it's like a, as you all know, it's like an army, it's like very military. There's you sort of put your stamp on the place that you're in and everything's controlled and the drivers and everything is very much like the production has control. But this was the opposite. It was sort of like Morocco put its stamp on us. It was just kind of, everybody was scrambling. I think the producers there weren't quite as effective as they had hoped. And nobody had ever shot there for that long. No TV production has ever shot in Morocco for that long, in Casablanca at least. And I know I had a great time, but like, as we were leaving, I was leaving with, like Leslie and some of those people. And then talking to them, I found out what a struggle it was to just put it together. And like, if you ask for a helicopter, and you ask for it for 3 months in advance and it's told that it's going to be there, it can't be 3 days late, or it can't be like, like you have to have it on the day, and so things like that, just like lost in translation.
Yeah.
So.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about working with Mandy Patinkin, who, is just an amazing actor to begin with, and then obviously has been on the show since the beginning. And you've spoken about the way that even at this point on the show, he still shows up excited to work and still kind of questioning every line and wanting to really get to the root of every scene. And what you really took away and were able to learn from just osmosis, even just working alongside him and getting to do scenes with him.
Yeah, exactly that. I was so impressed because I didn't know how he was going to be. I don't know what I was expecting, but I certainly wasn't expecting the amount of commitment that he had to the scene. Like, he came in and had all kinds of questions and took the director aside and was just one. And it wasn't. I've worked with all kinds of people, and there's definitely people that waste time because they need attention, maybe, and so they'll need the attention and they're insecure. It wasn't that at all. It was like he was really trying to figure stuff out and wanted it to be the best it could possibly be. And so it was really cool. And it was also just a trip because that was the first time I'd met him. We'd had scenes on the green screen because I would be in the Situation Room talking through the monitor, but I would just be a black monitor. So I'd never seen him. And it was a trip because it's he's been on the show for 8 years. I'm just cruising in the last season. And I'm the president. And he's like, he's guy's national security advisor, right? I always get that mixed up with Secretary of State. But he comes in and he's deferential to me, of course, because I'm the president, and it's just so funny, having that kind of power. But I just was really impressed, and it's his last. He's been on this show for 8 years, and he's just so committed, and it just goes to show that the reason people are good and win awards is because they really work hard. It's just like. It's inspiring because it's like, you work. The people that are at the very top are not just like, you can't just sit back. You can't ever just sit back. You have to keep working really hard. And I think that's a good thing because it means that the people that have I think the people that win a lot of awards and have a lot of success, they're not just sitting back. It's everybody's working, and you need to work too. And if you work, you can get there.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective on it. Yeah. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Everyone's been working for years to get to that.
Yeah. Keep it, and just don't sit back. Just keep going.
Yeah, I was also curious about what the environment was like on set, given that the show was kind of coming to the end, and you were there right as they were shooting the final episode, and just what that felt like to be on set every day, and particularly at the very end.
Well, you know what? It wasn't like you'd imagine because my stuff was very compartmentalized. So I wasn't with the people that had been on the show forever. And also the writers, then you would look to the crew. There was some crew that had been there from the beginning, but a lot of the crew had assembled from Europe, their sort of European crew and different people. So it was kind of a hodgepodge of different people, not many of whom had been there from the beginning. And there was so much work to be done that there wasn't a ton of sitting back and reflecting and going, oh my God, I can't believe it. I mean, Leslie Lincoln Glatter would have been that person, and she was just so busy, and the writers too, they were trying to get stuff done. And I wasn't with Claire. Like, I was working with Hugh, and I'd see Claire every once in a while because she'd come and see Hugh in the green room, which was cool. It was like this. We had all these Moroccan rugs, and they'd made this whole room because that's what they thought they needed to do, and they had tea for us. It was so sweet. But yeah, I mean, there was a party, a rap party, but I think it was really scramble, and then there was a final kind of dinner at Claire's place or a little party, and everybody was exhausted, so it was like one of those things. Where nobody had time to really celebrate, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't spend tons of time with Claire because I didn't work with her. I never had scenes with her. So, but I was aware. I was like, I can't believe I'm on this, the last season of this.
Yeah. And then on the flip side to being the one coming in the final season, when you were on, a show like True Blood, which you run for several seasons, I was curious about the way in which you and the rest of the cast would think about the environment that you wanted to create for people who were coming in, later episodes or just for character arcs, and how you would work collaboratively with them to make sure that they always felt welcome and everything was cohesive. Oh yeah,
for sure. I mean, I was aware of that from day one on that show. Just because even if you're coming on a show that is not successful yet, it can be nerve-wracking. It's always the hardest job is doing a starring role. I mean, that's the hardest job because you got to come in and kill it and then go. And if you're on something for a long time, you can have a hard part, but at least you're comfortable and it feels like home. So yeah, I've always been aware of that and tried to make an extra effort to make people feel like, yeah, it's no big deal. You're here and it's great and psyched, and because you're only as good, your scene's only going to be as good as your partner, so you always want to do that.
Yeah. I also love that recently you were talking about one of the early kind of guest roles that you had on Dexter, where you were one of the very early murder victims, and you were saran wrapped to a table, and the way that, kind of almost out of like over politeness, you ended up strapped to that table, sweating for over 4 hours. And I just wanted to kind of ask what you learned from that and other early experiences similar to that about, making sure that you're still kind of playing well with everyone on set, but making sure that you have a voice for yourself and you say certain things when you need them, and finding that balance.
Yeah, it's funny. Michael Cuesta directed that, and then he also worked on True Blood for a few episodes, and he directed the Homeland pilot for Homeland, and he directed one of the later episodes. So I've worked with him like on three different shows. But yeah, that I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, but it was like 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and it was, it's like the thing of being a guest star, you just don't really speak up for yourself. And I don't know what I would have asked, I guess I would have said, let's just cut me out and then re-wrap me, because I can't be in it for 4 hours. But I didn't say it because I was too, I was trying not to make waves, and it wouldn't have been making waves. Everybody wants you to be comfortable and have everything you need. So yeah, that was definitely a good lesson of knowing that you matter. You come on and people do respect you and as an actor, and you do matter, even if you just have a few lines. And in a lot of ways, you only get the amount of respect that you ask for. Mm-hmm. That's sort of a good lesson in life, I guess, and not to go overboard with it and ask for too much, but when you're coming on a set, it's hard, it's like, again, being a guest star is like the hardest job, but definitely just know that you're as important as anybody else, and you'll be treated as such, if you ask for it.
Yeah. And
in whatever way that is, in your demeanor or in your whatever,
Yeah. And now that Homeland's wrapping up, what would you say that you really learned about your craft as an actor from being on the show and your time spent there?
Well, it's really just given me a lot of confidence, because I never, as an actor, saw myself playing something like the president, I don't know. It's just, I think we all have our wheelhouse, and then the other part of the wheelhouse that we also do, and then other rooms that we do. But then there's a few rooms way off in the distance where we're like, well, I could never do that. I could never. But for me, just personally, playing that part opens up all these other doors, because I know I can do those other things, and of course, I could have always done that, but I feel like a lot of actors have in their head this unconscious thing of, oh, I'll never get cast as that, because I never get cast as that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it, or that you're not built for it, put it that way. Because I think there's an unconscious feeling of, I'm not built for that kind of character. But a lot of people are built for a lot more than they realize. So for me, really, and also I may stop putting my hands in my pocket as much, or at least I'll use that as a choice.
We'll never see you with coffee on it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll use it as a choice, Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your work on Homeland. It's really wonderful, and I'm so excited to see the final episode and see where it all ends up. Thank you very much. Yeah,
thanks so much. And just a quick plug, I have another series that's a whole series that I'm the lead of that's coming out in May 1st. So it's going to be on a streaming service. I can't say which one yet, but keep an eye out for it.